Well, hello. Thanks for joining us today. This is Anthony, parent of IRS Medic, and thank you for joining us on this glorious Good Friday morning. With me is the great John Richardson joining us today. I talked to a friend of yours yesterday, by the way, John.
Really? I didn't know
Yeah.
I had any friends.
Yeah. Well, he's a friend of yours. Yeah. He mentioned his project you were doing last night. We immediately talked about For Good in Taxation, our favorite Charles Adams book.
Oh,
Yeah, and we had a great day yesterday, and we'll be including something you in the future of something we discussed you greatly. So we discussed, and really, this is the thing that you need to know is John is such a resource. He is one of the greatest guys around, and his knowledge and his persistence and his ability to dig in these issues has made this channel so much better and me a better attorney. I really want to thank John for what he's doing for everybody. You know, we deal with a lot of terrible situations here, but there's very, very good, very, very intelligent people like John Richardson on the side of the good guys. So it is just an honor to be on the same team as you, John. So thanks for everything you do.
well, Anthony, I've got to say, my father would be so proud to hear that, and my mother might even believe it.
Well, right on. So today we're going to be talking about something that, this is, something we talk about constantly is how the U.S. is currently the only major country that treats all its citizens as tax residents, right? You don't need to live in the U.S. to be treated as a tax resident. And it's very confusing for people because we're the only country in the world, really the only country in the world that does it. There's been speculation as to what would happen if other major countries did the same thing that we did, right? Citizenship taxation would have a practical meaning only for the country of its non-resident citizens, right? If you're in the country already, citizen-based taxation really can't affect you because you're already subject to the taxation. And this is because citizenship taxation will create a dual tax residency for the non-resident citizens of a country. Now, John, you wrote this, and you know what? That's a really good way to think about that, is that really what citizenship-based taxation does is it creates two tax residencies. That's really what it does. And isn't that clever? Isn't that cute? Now, generally, treaties allow for dual tax residents to use a treaty to become a tax resident of only one country, right? The exception is when a treaty includes a savings clause that allows a country to tax its citizens without regard to the treaty. John, this is so well written and so precise, and you're expressing, really what the problem is. These treaties that you read the treaty and you're like, this is great news. This is great. This treaty is really helping me out. But then there's a savings clause that's a little hidden that could take away all those treaty benefits. It's really, or the meaningful treaty benefits that you're looking for.
Anthony, on that, I think it's really, really important for people to understand that a savings clause generally, but the U.S. savings clauses in particular do, is create a situation where the treaty partner country agrees to allow the United States to impose its own tax, form, and penalty regime on the tax residents of the other country, the treaty partner country, right? So Canada signs this treaty with the United States that includes the saving clause. And what Canada is saying is, yes, by God, one, we're going to allow the United States of America, that great country, to claim anybody in this country as a tax resident by defining them as a U.S. citizen, and then impose U.S. tax forms and penalty rules on those people who are tax residents of our country. So you see, this whole notion that somehow the saving clause is designed to protect the ability of the U.S. to tax its tax residents is pure, unadulterated bullshit. Okay,
Wow,
the exact opposite is what it is.
This is what people are tuning into here, John. Exactly this. Very well said. And I'm thinking in my mind, my own imagery in my mind is, here's Canada saying, welcome, U.S. Treasury. Welcome to Canada. Look at this entire glorious country full of all this. This is yours. We want you to know this is your penalty bonanza right here. All of this can be yours. Just take it. Just take it. Welcome. And every country in the world is doing this. Say, please, U.S. This our territory, our borders, everything that happens here. If there's an American person in here, it's actually yours. Do whatever you want. It's all wonderful yours.
Far worse. If there's anybody in there who we say is an American person, right? And this is the problem, right? And this extends into the FATCA IGAs. And we've made this point before. That is, if you look at the FATCA IGAs, in the definition section, generally double E, okay, the definition section specifically says the definition of U.S. citizen is determined by U.S. law, specifically the Internal Revenue Code, right? So this allows the United States to just basically tweak the definition, right, of, who's a U.S. citizen, other kind. Now, they would say that's absurd. They would never do that, but that is quite clearly what they are doing. Okay, that is quite clearly what they are doing. And they're doing this, to anticipate the objections, to what I just said. They're doing this through Internal Revenue Code 7701A50, all right, which specifically says that somebody doesn't cease to be a U.S. citizen for tax purposes until they go through a certain procedure, right? So, I mean, there's no doubt that this is what's going on. There's no doubt that these tax treaties violate the sovereignty of other countries. This, by the way, is why, the end game on this has got to be that other countries cannot allow U.S. citizens to live in those countries as long as this is going on. Because every U.S. citizen who lives in another country is just a living, breathing, carbon-based instrument of tax-based erosion in that other country.
That's right. That's right. They are just, those are the people that can take money out of your country and remit it back to the U.S. and have to, oftentimes, to pay taxes.
That's exactly right. And let's take an incredibly simple example. It's very common in countries to have a capital gains exemption on the sale of a principal residence. Now, that's a policy reason. Why? Well, because you want to allow people to be able to move, right? And maybe move up and stuff like that. So in Canada or the UK and, many, many other countries, right, you sell your principal residence, and that particular sale of capital property is not subject to a capital gains tax. But of course, the United States comes in and taxes that, right, therefore siphoning that productive capital in general out of the country, but also preventing that person who's defined as a U.S. citizen from being able to take the money from the sale of their house and buy an equivalent house, right?
Yeah.
All roads lead to renunciation.
All roads, and I think, and I think there's going to, and I think there's actually something, and I'll get to the end why I don't think this could possibly, what Britain's proposal. Let me get to that. So because this is such a wonderful idea, the U.S. citizen taxation, there's many pundits and many politicians licking their chops to say, oh, the United States of America, we don't want you to be alone in taxing citizens on a worldwide basis. Oh, this is what we like. This is what, let me just get to this. Here we go. Here's an opinion. Someone has an opinion. Marion Somerset Webb, a Kamalist, for an opinion, says, you know what? Britain should tax citizens abroad like the U.S. does. Here it is. It's free revenue, she's claiming. Free revenue. The UK might be missing a mega money-raising trick by focusing too narrowly on non-dom taxes. So I guess the first thing we need to discuss, what is a non-dom tax before people get too confused? What's that about? What's a non-dom tax? And I think I actually have this up here, right? Don't I have this? Or don't I have that definition somewhere, John? For non-dom tax? Where is that?
I wrote a long time ago.
You did somewhere here. Could you just explain to me what the non-dom tax is?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So, as you know, in the world, there are various tax systems, and some of them are sort of hybrid, right? So we have worldwide taxation, which is what most OECD type countries have, meaning that every individual who is a tax resident is taxable on all their income in the world, wherever it may be received from. At the other end of the extreme, we have territorial systems, right, which means that a country taxes only the economic activity that occurs inside its territory. Whatever goes on outside the country is not taxable, and Hong Kong is typically offered as an example of that. But so we have, say, at one extreme, right, Canada would be a pure residency-based taxation system. Oddly enough, I think the U.S. is mostly a residency-based taxation, but notice there is that foreign earned income exclusion, right?
Yeah.
where certain Americans abroad can exclude, up to 100, whatever it is, 100, 120,000. So that's a carve out, if you will, right, to worldwide taxation. And what that is saying, well, we're going to keep our hands off certain income earned outside the United States in certain circumstances. Now, to bring this to the UK, they have what's called have had from ever what's called a non-dom regime. And what that is that if you're a tax resident, okay, the presumption is that you're taxed on your worldwide income. But if your domicile, right, as opposed to tax residency, if your domicile is outside the UK, then income that you may earn from investments and that sort of thing from outside the UK will not be taxed in the UK unless you bring it into the UK for your use. Now that's a bit of an oversimplification, but what it is, okay, it creates a carve out to worldwide taxation for certain people who are not domiciled in the UK under certain circumstances. And this is not general. Now, why would a country do this? Well, the reason they would do it is if you look at some of these new citizenship by investment programs or golden visas and stuff like that, often they contain some kind of a tax provision, where you won't be taxed on certain kinds of income for a certain number of years, right? Why? To attract people to move to the country. Now, what the UK has been very effective at doing is, attracting wealthy, we use the word foreigners to the UK, because if they plan properly, and by the way, you have to pay a fee to do this. Okay, it's not entirely free, right? But if you plan properly, you can actually set it up to exclude foreign income, right, from UK taxation, as long as you meet. It's not that simple, but that would be the result of it, right? So their view is that what they do is they attract, wealthy, productive people to the country in exchange for, not taxing them on certain, passive income streams, et cetera. Now that's more or less what's going on. Okay. I'm sure that at the edges, somebody might criticize the way I just explained that in small ways, et cetera. But to see it as a carve out for certain kinds of income from the general principle of worldwide taxation. Now, this, of course, hit the headlines big time when Prime Minister Sunak's wife, who's an Indian domiciliary, okay, who her father, I think, founded Infosys or something. Anyway, major wealth, and she apparently was taking a position that she was a non-dom, right? Interesting, even though she's married to the prime minister of the country, but leaving that aside for a minute, right? A non-dom, and therefore shouldn't have been taxed on that particular income stream, right? Now, what's happening here is that, I don't think that if the masses understood this, somebody who lives next door to the Sunaks or something, and who's not married to who's married to somebody who's clearly a domiciliary of the UK, right? With all kinds of passive income streams, pays tax. I could well understand why that person would be unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah.
that the
Right.
prime
It seems
minister
perfect.
not.
Right.
Okay. But that aside. So a couple weeks ago, as part of the whole UK budget, I think UK budget process, what have you. Anyway, there's an announcement they're phasing out the non-dom regime, but they're
Oh,
doing
so it is going away. There's no question about it. It is
well. If the legislation follows through,
okay.
they're getting rid of that, and whatever. I think that. I don't personally think it's all that offensive. If the result of it is, to bring a certain kind of person into the country. But what have you? Every country, has the sovereign right to determine its tax policies, but not the tax policies of other countries, right? Which is the problem with citizenship taxation. So this article here is written by this columnist, Marion Somerset Webb, if I'm pronouncing it properly, is, interesting sort of fluffy article, right? That generally, I think, comments on, getting rid of the UK non-dom regime, but says, wait a minute here. If we're looking for revenue, why don't we emulate our great friend the United States.
United States, right? Everything works great, right? And there's one big reason why, and she missed the point. And I'll get to that in a little bit. And it's just, here's another article. I actually don't even know. I was trying to figure out do you know if she's a UK citizen?
I don't know. The only thing I know about
She
her is
looks like an American, so she's commenting on what they should do. Now, this is what I would say is that,
she's British based.
yeah. And so here's her comment, like, okay, and it's sort of an interesting euphemism we have here, missing a mega money raising trick. Wow.
Mega money raising.
Wow. That's a way to say confiscation of wealth, right? I mean, that's interesting. Now, so here it is, big promise of free revenue, right? Just like, things that we've heard, like FATCA, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act was going to give all this free revenue to the United States of America. And actually it ends up costing the IRS more than they bring in. Kind of a forgotten fact about that. That's the only reason why FATCA was allegedly signed into law, was because it was going to raise revenue, which never showed up, right? So all of these promises of additional money, and I think that's something that we can sort of show that there might not be getting what they have. Now, we have a comment here from Suzanne here. I think we want to get this one here too, because she's got something here. Good morning, Suzanne. Thanks for joining us today. One of the biggest reasons the UK is considering ending non-dom status has been the abuse of their parliamentarians and spouses abusing it and not paying U.S. tax while clearly resident. And there, and that's really where, when you're talking about this, it's like, wow, this is a very convenient scandal, if you would, that would allow, like, well, here's our basis. Hey, look, we're cheating. Hey, we're here basically cheating on our own tax laws. Therefore, that's the same people who are taking advantage and I mean, kind of abusing this, are the ones saying, yeah, we need to change the law. Well, they could just change their behavior, right? But if they change their behavior, then the justification for changing the law goes away. So it's a very convenient. I don't even know that much about it, but this already stinks to me. Like, wait a second, why are you doing that? It's so disgusting.
Well,
and you don't need a law to stop it. You could just stop being so disgusting.
Let's actually look at this a little bit, okay?
Okay.
So what, as I understand this, just based on what I've read, the Prime Minister's wife, after this uproar over this thing, okay, decided that she was not going to take advantage of the non-dom regime and that she was going to include this. That's what I understand. But let's just say that's true.
Okay.
Part of the problem with this discussion, and I think that we almost walked into it ourselves a minute ago, is that somehow the assumption that this income source outside the UK is not subject to tax somewhere else, right?
Right.
Now, I don't know a lot about the tax system in India, but I know that it's aggressive and it's brutal. Okay, and based on everything I know about it, I doubt very much, okay, that there's going to be any exemption, from the dividends received in India, because that's
Right.
clearly sourced in India, right? So what would that mean? All right, so the Prime Minister's wife, okay, and I put it that way only because I don't want to mispronounce her name. Okay, the Prime Minister's wife may not have been paying tax on that money in the UK, taking advantage of the non-dom regime, but I think it's probably somewhere between 99 and 100%. That those dividends were taxed in India, right? Now let's assume that all of a sudden, okay, I'm now a UK tax resident for all purposes. I have ended my non-dom status. All right, so now all that income, is taxable in the UK, but presumably it's subject to foreign tax credit offsets, right? For tax paid in India. So, I mean, it's not as if, the non-dom regime means somehow that no tax is being paid on this money at all.
Right.
It's just that it's being excluded from the tax base for UK tax purposes. Notice that in this case, I'd be willing to bet that the taxes in India are high enough, okay, roughly to offset those UK taxes. Now, another thing that is generally in the public domain about the Prime Minister and his wife is they were both green card holders. Okay, they're both green card holders, or they were at least. And all the time that she had a green card, clearly she had this income. Now, my guess is, what do I know, right? But, my guess is that, they were filing U.S. tax returns as treaty non-residents, meaning in the U.S., meaning they pay tax only on U.S. source income and sort of, keeping it out that way. But in any case, enough on that.
Well, it seems like we have a pretty nice summary here. I give credit here. This seems like a pretty nice summary of how the non-dom works here. Ms. Webb did do this, and apparently, so this is something that doesn't go on forever. I guess you can't.
That's right.
After 15 years, you can't pay your way out of the UK tax system anymore. You have to pay tax on all income and gains in the same way as everyone else does in the UK. So this is not some sort of permanent status. So if you're going to do this, just understand there's the opposite of light at the end of the tunnel, right?
I mean, let me tell you though, another aspect that is not discussed here. It's a very serious problem, and this would apply directly to U.S. citizens. So imagine a wealthy U.S. investment banker moves to the UK, and the question becomes, well, should I take advantage of the non-dom regime? Now, why would I do that? Well, I would do that because the U.S. taxation of passive income streams is certainly less than the UK. So would it make sense for me to take advantage of the non-dom regime? Right. Now, eventually, if they're going to stay there long term, right, that income is going to be, paid out, et cetera. Right. So, see, basically where I'm going with this, okay, I'm having trouble with it this morning, is there are timing differences in the receipt of the income, right? So you want to make sure that you receive the income in the UK when you still have the opportunity to use U.S. tax paid as foreign tax credits, right? You see what I'm saying? Okay.
Yeah.
So it may very well mean that the non-dom regime is not a good idea, for certain people regardless. So whatever. I mean, as usual, get professional help. Okay. But it is a political issue.
It is. Well, and here's a claim. The claim is it will raise 3.6 billion pounds for the Treasury along the way. Okay, there's the claim. It's going to, raise 3.6 billion. I'm not sure if that's per year or just entirely. But I think, there's a dynamic at place though, that if you end this, that you might actually end up being backfiring, because the whole design, it sounds like the whole design of this non-dom status is to sort of bait people into entering the UK tax system. And perhaps it's been successful. I can't comment on that. I don't know. But, by eliminating this, you can't just say, oh, yeah, this is nothing else will change. FATCA, by the way, was claimed, it claimed it was going to raise $900 million per year. It just never did.
Totally fabricated figure.
Fabricated. And that's it. And I think that's my point. When you see these claims about, okay, this is how it's good, this is what's going to happen. These are all the most, these figures are based on models that are never take into account reality. They never do. They're like, oh yeah, we'll just apply this to, okay, this is the way it is. Just put a percentage of the figure there. There's a number. There it is. As if people won't react, as if people don't react to changes in the law, right? And that's sort of the assumption that always, drives me nuts in this analysis. You're claiming there's free money, but the reason why you're getting money currently is because of this non-dom status. You are getting some money because of this. And if it ends, and the thing, and I would say this too, if it ends now, well, there's a lot of people on that 15-year, period where like, hey, look, they're coming to the point where, hey, they all that money, but now like, wait, let me get out of here because this thing isn't so good.
It'll drive people out of the UK for sure, right?
Yeah. And let's see here. So, both, okay, and here's like, okay, this is easy to implement, politically amusing for the Conservative Party, that it should raise revenue, and this is, and I think this is, it's, and that's why it's set up so cleverly, right? And not that I'm really for, not that I really care about, this is a special carve out for people overseas. But what really the part that I find obnoxious is that they think this is the two things. Number one, that this isn't some sort of just confiscation of wealth. Number two, it's ignoring other countries' sovereignty. And number three, these wild claims of just easy revenue. And these things are all, that's what is missing in here. And then, how these plans always backfire. All these plans to backfire and raise these taxes, it backfires because it fails to account for the fact that people react to punitive taxation. All the time, they fail to account for the fact that people react to punitive taxation and even just regular taxation. And it's often the primary focus of people. And a lot of our channels dedicated to Americans who are considering or renouncing or have renounced your U.S. citizenship, because that's how punitive it is. How much do you get when someone just leaves entirely? And the answer is nothing. And that's what happens when you decide to be really, really punitive on people, just sort of take their wealth because you want it. Because we need a revenue raising trick. And well, hey, you got money. We want it. We want it. This is, I mean, I don't know what 3.6 billion would do for UK. It wouldn't be a drop in the bucket in the, wouldn't do anything in the US.
Wouldn't do anything anywhere.
Yeah, it wouldn't really, I don't really see it as raising, I think this is a revenue raising trick that exactly it. It's a trick, but there's not really, it's not a good policy, right? It's not going to be a good long-standing policy to raise the additional revenue that you do, and it actually could backfire completely.
It's ignoring the foreign tax credit offsets.
Okay? Yeah,
I think that's almost
that's a huge thing. That is a big fact, right? Well, they're not paying taxes. Okay, great, tax them. Now you're just not getting anything anyway through a different mechanism. Now you're not getting any taxes, but now you could say, hey, we're raising money here, when they really won't do this. And this is what they're saying with all of this. UK, she says the UK government might be missing a mega money raising trick. It's like, well, I don't think it's mega. The mega part, I don't think $3.6 billion, even if that figure is correct, which it certainly isn't, is actually mega. That doesn't seem like it's really, might not be worth it. And you're destroying this entire, you're destroying this entire program. Now this is the thing here, right? I love this here. And this is the great explanation of it. And God bless her for this, right? Until now, UK expats who have been lived abroad or been domiciled abroad for tax purposes for more than 15 years have not been entitled to vote in UK elections, right? Which is, okay, all right, get it. And because no representation without taxation, right? And she has a little the other way around there, but the sentiment's the same. But that changed because now, just like Americans abroad, and your vote's so important, you can vote in elections, and certainly you can waste your vote. And they think about 3.5 million people eligible to vote, which is certainly not a threat to the people in power, right? The people in power aren't worried about these 3.5 million people voting them out. That's for sure, because their vote's so diluted, just like Americans abroad. So isn't that funny? You can impose this tax. So wait a second. Hey guys, we're going to impose this tax that will not be helpful to you, but we're going to give you the right to vote. Well, to me, that's proof that they know votes don't matter. Just like, the same ruse that we see in the United States, that Americans abroad, their votes are diluted throughout every political district. So there's no meaningful voice for that, right? So we're sort of seeing the same thing here. So there is this the end of it. So there it is. So she has her opinion there. Now I have your thread up here, John. It would be a good time to point over here. Now I'm going to point over here. We got a great comment here. Here we go. Maybe a bunch of countries should start taxing all their citizens abroad and then have the governments fight over the tax revenue.
All right.
Then maybe
I suggest we use that as a springboard for, let's do a thought experiment here. What would happen if the UK adopted citizenship taxation?
Yes.
In other words, let's do that. Let's use that as a springboard.
Exactly. Let's move over to that, right? And I think this is I
wrote a long time ago about the non-dom regime.
Okay, so this is the non-dom. Okay, so what would happen, John, if this changes? Let's go through it.
Okay. Would it be possible, Anthony, for you to, I sent you this, for you to pull up the relevant excerpt of the UK-Canada tax treaty? It was at the bottom of the thing I sent you. It was either Appendix A, B, or...
So, okay, I could get that up. So what was that again you were looking for?
Pull up the excerpt I sent you from the UK-Canada tax treaty.
Okay, got it. Okay, I got the OECD. I'm looking at that one. OECD.
It might be the
Okay, got it. Yeah, okay, yep, got it. Okay, yep, okay, found it.
put that up on the screen if you would, so
Oh
people
boy.
can
All
look at
right, let me see how I can get this up here. All right, let me try to open up my. All right, hang on a second. 1 second. Let me switch a screen here and. Let's zoom in on that. Okay. All right, hopefully we can see this here. It's a little small.
Okay.
Can you read that? And I can't get it any larger.
Okay. All right.
Let me get
Okay.
let me get down to it. Here we go. This is what you're looking for, John, right? Appendix C?
UK, Canada. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All
Okay.
right. Now, so let's just, before we look at this, okay, let's understand, all right, that the UK has a vast, vast treaty network system with other countries. All right. Vast. Certainly more than the United States does, et cetera. Now, remember this, that at the moment, the United States is the only country, all right, with citizenship taxation. It's also, there are very, very few other tax treaties at present that include a saving clause. Now, so here we are. Let's close your eyes, everybody. Let's imagine one, the UK says we're now going to have citizenship taxation, just like the United States. And when our citizens go abroad, and they become a tax resident of Canada. Now they are therefore tax residents not only of Canada according to Canada's laws, but the UK because of citizenship taxation. So we begin with the principle, assuming they make this change, that under the treaty, okay, that UK citizen is now a tax resident of both Canada and the UK, right? Now, Article 4, and by the way, these are all based on the OECD model tax treaties, okay, at various times, right? Article 4 of the treaty basically says this. One, if you're a tax resident of both countries, this applies only if you're a tax resident of both countries, and you are, because you're a UK citizen, a resident of Canada, then we're going to use that provision, Article 4, if you will. Okay, I think you need to move down to Article 4. No, actually, no, you're at Article 4.
Yep.
Don't worry about it. You're going to use Article 4 to say, all right, if a person's a tax resident of both countries, we're going to use the treaty to allocate tax residents to one country or the other. And the first way of doing it is, where do you have a permanent home? So let's keep it simple. The UK citizen has a permanent home in Canada. Now listen carefully. As per the treaty, okay, as per the treaty, that person is now a tax resident only of Canada,
Oh.
right? So notice that the treaty tiebreak provision mutes the effect of citizenship taxation. You see that? Right? Say what you want. Yes, by God, according to UK law, you're a tax resident of the UK, but you're also a tax resident of Canada. And that makes you a dual tax resident. And we have a tax treaty with Canada that says that if you're a tax resident of both the UK and Canada, then you're going to be treated as a tax resident of the country where you have a permanent home. So therefore, the person becomes a tax resident of Canada and not the UK. Now, are you with me?
Yeah, that's
Now, this is how the vast majority of these tax treaties are written. We'll get to the US one in a second, right? But this is how the vast majority of these tax treaties are written, right? So basically, what that generally would mean, okay, is that the individual would be taxable probably only on UK source income, which they are anyway without citizenship tax.
right. Yeah, it doesn't do anything. Right.
So that's exactly right. So my point here is that notice that this type of basic tax treaty modeled on the OECD, which is what is pretty much the state of the art in all these Canadian and UK tax treaties, it mutes the effect of citizenship taxation if you can use the treaty tiebreak rules to establish tax residency in only one country, making citizenship taxation completely irrelevant for most of these people. Did I explain that clearly?
You explained it beautifully well, and we're again the article we just were talking about was they're saying, hey, look, there's free money if we get rid of this carve out, the non-dom status, but there's another way to get it, and it's through the treaties that exist. Basically,
No, it's not saying through the treaties. It's not making reference to the treaties, and that's
right.
What it's saying is that if we just tax people because they're a citizen, maybe we can get some free money. Now that may be true in certain circumstances.
Right.
The point I'm making is that most of these British expats, they don't live in, they like to live in first world countries, that remind them of home a little bit. And these are precisely the kinds of countries that the UK, and now you look at Canada, they have these vast treaty networks that operate, to assign tax residency generally to the country where there's a permanent home. And for listeners, yeah, I know it's more complicated. I'm just trying to keep this simple, though, okay? And that, by the way, is why, all right, if you look at the CRS, the Common Reporting Standard, residence is determined according to these treaty tiebreak principles as well, right? Which is why under the CRS, automatic information exchange, again, you tend to not have dual tax residency. But the point here is this, that in the vast majority of circumstances, the contents of the treaty, specifically the treaty tiebreak, operate to mute the effects of dual tax residency, including dual tax residency caused by citizenship taxation. All right. So that's why, this is just, a bunch of nonsense, right?
It's not. Yeah, it's not. It doesn't sound very, it's kind of shocking the lack of, insight into this. And so if you are, if you're watching this podcast, you probably know more about this than nearly everybody else. And because they're not getting this analysis on the treaty part, they just didn't even discuss it.
Well, they don't even know that it exists. Now, I just want to say one more thing before we move on. And again, this is to, ward off the hecklers and the I know better, people out there, right? Yes, I'm fully aware that the 2017 OECD Model Tax Treaty has added a saving clause in Article 1, Paragraph 3. I'm aware of that.
Okay.
But it is not intended to operate the same way the U.S. does. The U.S. one was, and we'll get to that in a second. Okay. So far, so good?
Yeah, so far, so good.
The next one I want to look at is specifically the excerpt from the UK-US tax treaty, which I also gave you down there. So if you want to get that one up. So in other words, let's imagine for a minute that, that we go back to the War of 1812, the U.S. and Britain go to war over taxation of citizens.
Fantastic war. That is here we go, and that's where the oldest tax treaty the U.S. has is the U.S.-UK tax treaty.
Okay, hold on. Did I not give you specifically the UK-US one?
No, I don't know if you did. Let me see here. I don't.
Go down further. If not.
Okay, here we go. Yep. Thank you. Yep, here it is. Yep, here it is. Okay.
All right. Now, just notice that it's there. Okay. Now, what's different? Anytime the U.S. is involved, it's different. And at the beginning of this podcast, we talked about, how the saving clause is used to essentially allow the U.S. to get into other countries and tax their residents. Now, why is that the case? Okay, because what the saving clause says, and I'm having trouble reading it too.
Yeah, it's a little.
All right, I'm going to pull this up myself so I can read it because I think this is very important for listeners.
Right. Here's a great comment from the natural while you're getting that. Trevor asked this question: what's next? A UK FATCA, and even though we're discussing this where the treaties will make many people tax residents of just that country where they won't be subject to UK taxation. Why wouldn't there be? Just because this wouldn't work doesn't mean that there wouldn't want to that the UK wouldn't want to do a massive power grab and look for all this information sharing. But Trevor, this is my opinion on this, and really the key difference between the US imposing a citizenship-based taxation and the UK doing it as well, is that the US dollar is the reserve currency of well, almost the world, but BRICS is taking over there too. But for much of Europe, I think all of Europe, the US dollar is the reserve currency. And so here's the problem that the UK would have in imposing its own FATCA regime on around the world. What's the penalty regime that they're going to have? How are they going to force foreign banks to impose their will? The mechanism by which the United States of America is able to get all of these foreign countries to do their bidding is that the US dollar is the reserve currency of the of the world, and the US Treasury can intercept payments coming from the US to all these foreign banks up to 30%, which would be ruinous to them. So that's the threat that allows the US to impose FATCA on a worldwide basis. And so honestly, Trevor, I don't see that the UK has it. They could try to do it and maybe be more along the common reporting standard or something like that. But I can't see the UK being able to unilaterally impose a FATCA reporting. It would have to be something bilateral, which is certainly not what FATCA is right now.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
So Appendix C, just put on the screen Article 1, Paragraph 4, and make it big enough so people can follow. If you can, Paragraph 4.
For the purposes of this convention?
Article 1, Paragraph 4.
Well, why don't I just hold on? Let me just get the I'll just get the I'll just get the treaty up there.
Yeah, just get the US UK tax treaty up.
Yeah, well, so that we all can see it. Yeah, I don't want to challenge people's near. Here we go. Let's get the income tax. And you'd want the treaty. You want Article
1, Paragraph 4, except to the extent provided. That's all I want.
That's all you want. Article 1, Paragraph 4. All right, here we go. Let's get that up here. Here we go. Now we should be able to read that now.
Okay. Now, everybody, listeners, just focus on. Now, a minute ago, we talked about the UK-Canada treaty that doesn't include a saving clause. Once a saving clause is introduced, things change. This is the UK-US tax treaty. The saving clause is Article 1, Paragraph 4. Now, I want to read this slowly and follow along because it's very deceptive. Notwithstanding any provision of this convention, except Paragraph 5, okay, we'll look at that later, a contracting state may tax its residents. Now, let's pause there. As determined under Article 4 residence. Okay. Now, that's the treaty tiebreak provision, right? And so they can always tax their residents as determined under Article 4. Now, separately, and by reason of citizenship, may tax its citizens. Okay. Now, let's go through that again slowly. Where I'm going with this is that saving clause, okay, prevents U.S. citizens from being able to use the tie-break provision to ever cease to be U.S. tax residents under the treaty. Now, let's go through that again very slowly. Notwithstanding any provision of this convention, except Paragraph 5, those are the exceptions to the saving clause. Okay, there are exceptions. In fact, let's read it without that even there for a minute. Okay, let's read it as simply as possible. Notwithstanding anything else, notwithstanding any provision of this treaty, a contracting state may tax its residents. Pause. How is resident determined? Under Article 4, remember that Article 4 has a provision that allows dual tax residents to be assigned to one country.
Okay.
And by reason of citizenship, tax its citizens, okay? Now let's simplify even more. because there's some fascinating provisions that come out of this. Absolutely fascinating. Right, Anthony? I'm
Yeah.
also kidding. Okay, now, so no matter what else the treaty says,
Doesn't matter.
the United States can tax its residents. Yeah, we're going to, allow the treaty tiebreak provision to decide who's a resident under the treaty. But, all that aside, also, we're going to tax our citizens without regard to the treaty. Right? So notice, all right, and this is amazing, that under these treaty, the tiebreak provision that mutes dual tax residency can never apply to U.S. citizens. They're always U.S. tax residents.
Right.
So far, so good. But here's what's fascinating. It does apply to green card holders. So we're in this amazing situation, and I find this amazing, where green card holders, their immigration status depends on their intent to live permanently as residents of the United States, making them U.S. tax residents,
They're
are
not
allowed
citizens.
to use the treaty tiebreak to cease to be U.S. tax residents when a citizen who may never have lived in the United States even one day is not allowed under the treaty to ever not be a U.S. tax resident. Now, Anthony, how cool is that?
So green card holders have kind of a leg up, right?
They sure do. Green card holders can use the tax residency tie. Now, I'm not saying they should. There are consequences. So this is not advice. I'm just saying that theoretically,
Yeah.
a green card holder can use the treaty tiebreak provision. Now, a citizen can't. Now, one question that I've often had from green card holders is, well, I'm thinking of becoming a U.S. citizen. Is it a good idea? And it occurs to me that one answer is, well, sure, if you want to give your right to be treated as a treaty non-resident under the treaty. I never hear anybody talk about that. Okay. But that is absolutely huge. All right. So the reason that U.S. citizenship taxation works is precisely because U.S. tax treaties operate to specifically never allow U.S. citizens to not be U.S. tax residents under the treaty.
Whereas the UK Canada one clearly does.
Exactly. Now I want to add a part two to this that is, I think, astounding.
Oh yeah.
All right, now let's
Already.
look at the treaty tiebreak provision for a minute. Okay, if you can move on down.
Okay.
Is it
To
Article 4? Move down.
Article 4. Okay.
Article 4. Let's see if we have Article 4. Yeah. Oh yeah. Keep going. Article 4.
Article 4.
And by the way, this is generally where residence.
Right.
Okay, now this is where anybody can define a tax resident any way it wants. Continue moving down.
Oh, here we go.
Pause. Okay, now that's related, to a specific UK provision that we can talk about separately, not a general one. Keep going on down. On down. Okay, now take a look at this. By reason of the provisions of paragraph 1, an individual is a resident of both contracting states, then his status shall be determined as follows. Now, remember that the U.S. specifically says citizenship is so important for tax residency that we're never going to allow a U.S. citizen, to opt out. But let's see how this absolutely does violence to and conflicts with the normal treaty tiebreaker rules, right? Which say, by reasons of the person, individual, both. Okay, here we go. First, you look at where the person has a permanent home, right? Circumstances of life. If permanent home in both countries, then we move to a sort of vital interest test. Where's your stuff and your family? Still haven't figured it out. Then you move to habitual abode. And if you still haven't figured it out, you know what you look to next? The person's citizenship. In other words, the trait that is the least relevant for determining tax residence under the treaty tiebreak provision is the number one criterion for U.S. tax residency. The U.S. has citizenship taxation, yet under the standard treaty tie-break provisions, okay, what happens is that citizenship is least relevant for determining tax residency. So really what these U.S. tax treaties say is this, like we realize, that citizenship is just total bullshit for determining tax residency. We realize that, and we agree with you, and that's reflected in Article 4, the tie-break provision, where if we look at Article 4, we only look to citizenship if we can't determine tax residency based on residence, right? But because we're the United States, and because this is all part of the rules-based international order, we are going to use citizenship, the least important criterion for tax residency under normal tax treaties, as the dominant characteristic for tax treaty. Okay, so anyway, this is probably really technical. The bottom line is this, that the reason that citizenship taxation works for the United States, okay, now this UK tax treaty, okay, scroll up a little bit to paragraph 3. Keep going up. No, maybe it's 2. Yeah, look at 2. An individual is United or alien made the United States as a resident of the United States only if the individual has substantial presence. Okay, that puts some restrictions on the treaty tie-break provision for UK, but this is as far as there are a few countries, okay, that have this particular provision in it. Point is, as a general principle, a green card holder can use the treaty tie-break provision as a general provision. Okay, so here's where we are. So the U.S. defines tax residency in terms of citizenship. It then includes a savings clause in the treaty that says no matter what else the treaty says, we can tax our citizens as though the treaty doesn't exist, right? Okay?
That's the key right there.
And
right?
we know what it means. And what that really means is that the U.S. can tax, and because citizenship taxation only has practical impact when the U.S. is taxing tax residents of other countries, what the saving clause really is, you want to enter into a tax treaty with the United States. What you are agreeing is the United States can impose its own tax rules on anybody who lives in your country who happens to be a U.S. citizen or who we define as a U.S. citizen. Of course, these idiots sign on the dotted line. Okay, fools that they are, right? Now, if we look at that particular now let's go back to the UK, right? Now let's look at that saving clause wherever it was a minute ago. And I want you to notice
the UK Canada savings clause.
The UK US.
Okay.
So you have to go back to paragraph 1 now.
Okay. Paragraph 1 of Article 4.
Article 1. I'm sorry. Article 1. Article 1.
All right.
Hold on. Article 1. Article 1. Article 1. Where is it? Article 1. Yeah. Keep going down. I think it would be paragraph 4. Paragraph.
Okay, here we go. Yep.
Now this is the U.S. UK one. So notwithstanding any provision except paragraph 5. Now paragraph 5. These are the carve-outs to the saving clause, which include tax credits and things like that.
Okay.
In any case, now this says a contracting state, not just the U.S. But what's interesting is that the UK could also tax its citizens in the United States. Now let's pause for a minute. This particular treaty provision, these saving clauses are different in different treaties. This particular one allows both the UK and the US to tax its citizens who are residents of the other country, right?
Yep.
So here, if the UK redefined tax residency to include citizenship under this treaty, but not other ones, because this is the one with that savings clause, under this treaty, the US-UK treaty, the UK could tax the UK could tax UK citizens resident in the United States, right? So now we have a situation where we know how US citizenship taxation works. UK citizenship taxation would vis-a-vis UK residents in the US work basically the same way. So the next question is, well, what would the effect of that be? Because remember, they still get foreign tax credits and things like that. Now the answer is probably not much, okay, because of the way to offset UK taxes with US taxes paid under the foreign tax credit rules, unless the UK designs some very specific taxes that apply disproportionately to UK citizens living in the United States. Now, what might those kinds of taxes be? Well, something like a provision that would impose punitive taxation on UK citizens who are US residents who buy US mutual funds.
Wow. Yeah.
Here's a second one that they might come up with. What about a provision that imposes taxation on fake income of UK citizens resident in the US who own US corporations?
Yeah. They could do the same thing, right? They can impose that. Hey, look,
In other words,
the corporations you're investing in have all these earnings. Yeah, no, they never distributed them to you, but you know what? They did have them, and you're a shareholder. So sorry.
yeah.
Here's
But at the present time, Anthony, the UK does not have these provisions at the present.
but so this could just be, you know, so I think what you're saying right now is the effect. So, you know, what I'm really hearing is that the effect of ending the non-dom status will actually not change too much. It probably won't bring in too much revenue. It won't change too much, but what it could set up is a massive change later on with additional taxes. Basically, it's like this is the groundwork.
We're not, yeah, okay. We're kind of done talking about the non-dom status. I mean, I think they're going to get rid of that. The question, though, is the introduction of citizenship taxation. Now, my point in summary is this: it's not going to make a goddamn bit of difference, okay, unless you're dealing with UK citizens who are resident in the United States. Why? Because mostly the treaties operate so that they're going to be treated as though they're not UK tax residents, even if they're citizens. But in the case of the US UK one, that includes a saving clause, which allows each country to tax its citizens resident in the other country. So here's the opportunity, right? If UK Treasury, here's the opportunity. You say, well, how many UK citizens have escaped to the United States and are living in the United States? If we impose citizenship taxation on them, coupled with emulating the United States with its PFIC rules and CFC rules and foreign trust rules, now we can go after those bastards, cripple them, and basically extract all that extra revenue to the UK. Right? In other words, you have to behave like the United States to be able to do it, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, this is really technical stuff.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Here we got a great comment. Ellen, he gave us a comment here. I guess France is she is playing around with this, and every time they've been reasoned out of it, and I think that France would have some of the many similar problems the UK would have, because they're and it's the only any treaty with the United States of America is the different one. That's the one that's
pull up the UK France tax treaty. Let's look at what the saving clause says.
Let me see let me get this up here. Okay, yeah.
I think the saving clause there might not allow France to take its tax its citizens. I think that might just be a US thing. France, no, you want France, US tax treaty.
Oh, France, US. Oh, I thought you wanted UK. Okay. All right. So we love all the blue here. I was looking at the protocol. Okay. So which article? 4?
Go to, well, it's either going to be 4 or 1. Go to 1 first.
Okay. Well, it's easier, right? Ooh, a president. There we go. This is so efficient, right? Let's go to Article 1. Ooh, yeah. Letter. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Okay. Here we go.
Okay. No, it's going to be in probably Article 4.
Yeah.
Article 4.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're looking at the U.S. French tax treaty, Ellen, right now.
Yeah. The question is, what does the saving clause say? Keep going down.
Notwithstanding.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. No, keep going down.
Yeah.
Okay. Where's the saving clause in that?
Yeah.
I'm not seeing it. I mean, I know it's there.
Yeah, I know that we're not gonna. Notwithstanding, here we go. It's
that has to do with permanent resident. That's a different.
Oh, that's not it. Okay.
Permanent establishment, rather. All right. I don't know. Go back to the top again.
Yep.
The question is, where is this? Where is the saving clause? Is that one? Is that the one where they put it in by a protocol? I'm wondering.
Yeah, and I think because I was just looking. I know I clicked on the protocol the other day because I
I'll
could
look
see
at
the
the
blue.
protocol.
I, I
What's the
I clicked on
protocol
that the other day for a reason.
for? Keep going. Okay, hold on. Governments, hold on. Keep going.
So yeah, I mean, this is a confusing thing. Is that the treaty oftentimes isn't the answer. You have to look at the protocol. So that's the other
Well, the
complication.
protocol is part of the treaty, right? Keep going to Article 4. Keep going down. Article 2. No. Okay, I don't know where it is. Okay,
Yeah, you got to take our
I
word
don't
for it.
know where. Okay, I don't know where the saving clause is in the France U.S. tax treaty, but let's pull up. I don't know. Pull up the Canada U.S. tax treaty. Let's see what
Okay.
that says. See, what we're looking for is a saving clause that only gives the U.S. the right to tax citizens, not the others. Now, what's interesting about this one? All right, yeah. Okay. What's the date on that? Okay.
This year,
Okay. This particular provision had changed, so we're okay. What's interesting about this one? It's not in Article 1. It's not in Article 4. It's in miscellaneous provisions. Go down to Article 29. Isn't this unbelievable?
yeah, Article 29. All right. Oh, luckily,
Miscellaneous.
luckily, I was pretty good at Roman numerals, right? I mean,
Hold on,
boy, yeah.
hold on, hold on. I think you might have passed it.
I'm still not there. I'm still at. Here
There's
we go. Here's 29.
29.
There you go. See?
Okay, stop, stop, stop. Now, oh, perfect. Look at this. Look at this. Okay, now this makes my point really, really well. Now, there are many different versions of the saving clause, and they're different, for tax treaties. Now, what got us started on this is that interestingly, the US UK tax treaty gives each party, saves the right to each party to tax its citizens. That's not the case for all these treaties, though. Look at, for example, this is Article 29, Paragraph 2, Canada US. Except as provided in Paragraph 3, not, nothing in the convention shall be considered preventing a contracting state from taxing its residents as determined under Article 4. And by the way, there's lots
Oh.
of green card holders in Canada who opt for that. I'm not saying they should, there are consequences. But here we go. Look at this language. In the case of the United States, its citizens. Right? So
Oh.
notice in this treaty, only the United States has the right to tax citizens, not Canada.
Oh, wow.
Right?
So
See, you have to read these things very, very carefully.
yeah, and we just don't have time to get to find the French one, but the you're saying
I
there's
don't know where
something.
it is. I found
There's
it
going to
before.
be something similar, right? The treaty where hey, this is a treaty between sovereigns, but the U.S. is a little bit more special, so they get a little bit more here. So there it is. Oh, all
All
right.
right.
Well, I
So
think we're
what does this mean? Okay,
yeah,
before we lose everybody. Okay, I think we should summarize. We've talked about the non-dom regime, which is whatever. What we're talking about is what if the UK changes tax residency rules?
right.
Say, like the US, the citizens are UK tax residents. Now, my view of this is that for the vast so again, now citizenship taxation has practical application only to non-resident citizens of a country, right? So it might, instead of calling it citizenship, just call it that we're going to go after our non-resident citizens for taxes provision. Okay, that's what it is.
Okay.
All right, now in the case of UK citizens who live in most countries, okay, where the UK is party to, sort of, general older tax treaties that don't have a saving clause, the treaty tiebreak rules are going to operate to 100% mute the effect of citizenship taxation,
Got
right?
it.
Because they don't have a saving clause, right? It's just a straight, reallocation of tax residency. Now, in the case of the United States, if we look at their particular tax treaty, okay, each country saves the right to tax its citizens. So, what would that mean for UK citizens who are US residents? Well, quite possibly nothing at all, because remember the foreign tax credits rules still work. okay, to be able to offset taxes on, many kinds of income. But of course, that depends on, how it's characterized in rates. Okay. But where the UK could really give it teeth is I mean, the evil of the United States is not restricted to the citizenship saving clause. It's not restricted to that. It's enhanced and given true meaning by a system of US tax rules that, in effect, apply disproportionately to Americans abroad and in a more punitive way, of which things like PFIC, foreign trust, CFC rules, this is where people feel the pain. So if the UK wants to go after UK citizens in the United States, they need to enact provisions, right? Similar provisions, right?
Ah, okay.
They would impose very punitive UK taxation on non-UK source income. Now, if they do that, they might be able to give it teeth. Of course, what they're going to do is people are just going to renounce UK citizenship, obviously.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I think you know what, John, this exercise today is sort of underlying this sort of two-stage problem that we have. Yes, citizenship-based taxation is a problem, but it's more on its own, it's more a perspective problem, because in the US we have citizenship-based taxation, but that's just the start of it. That's the foundation to impose drastically different and punitive tax regimes, taxing regimes on foreign income than things domestically. And one example is depreciation. Foreign property, you can't depreciate it the same way as U.S. property. Oh, no, no, no.
That's true, but that's less visible. I mean, let's just think, okay, small businesses. Let's think foreign mutual funds. Just to keep it simple and visual for people, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's exactly right. So what you do is you begin with citizenship taxation. Okay. Then what you do is you need a saving clause in a treaty, right?
To get rid of the right.
Yeah, to essentially enforce it. Then what you need to do is to amend, is to have specific rules in your domestic tax code, which really goes after foreign income streams.
Vengeance. Yeah.
Now, the fact that the U.S. has all three is what makes citizenship taxation work. It would not work, okay, without a saving clause where the other country agrees to allow the U.S. to punish its own tax residents, and without very, very punitive taxation, right, of non-U.S. income streams and assets and things like that. So it's really 2 and 3 that give it teeth. So, you look at an article like this. Oh, gee, why don't the UK move to citizenship taxation? Well, mostly, I mean, that's sort of a completely clueless sort of thing to say, right? Unless you understand this stuff. But you have to make a lot of other changes. Now, one final point that I think is interesting here, if we look at the article, she ties it to the value of the UK passport. My view of this forever, since the beginning, is that the way to manage this, if you really want to punish your citizens abroad, which obviously the U.S. wants to do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the U.S. hates all its citizens. All right,
right. Or it hates all its citizens, but those overseas the most. Yeah,
America,
special hatred.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. One way to do this would be just to impose very high passport fees, right? I mean, why not just charge every U.S. citizen, if you want to live outside the United States, an annual fee, right? Now, I know a lot of people would be offended by that, but honestly, it would be a lot better than the system that exists today.
You might be giving them an idea, though, John, because why not have both, right?
They're not listening.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. This is we're talking about the law and looking at things, and not so that's definitely things they're not interested in, right? Yeah, they're not going to.
Well, but that would also, I mean, if you look at, it's interesting. You look at the author's justification. I find, and you see this in the United States too. For example, in the discussion leading up to the 2008 exit tax, the 877A that began in 2005, Assistant Secretary Samuels, and this is on a video. You can see this in discussion. talked about the value of a U.S. passport, right? He was talking about, oh my God, after college, I went and studied for, in the UK for a while. Boy, I value that U.S. passport. This sort of nonsense, right? Um, so, I think that a much more logical way to do this, if you're going to do it at all, is just to impose a passport fees. I mean, look, they've already made the decision to restrict passports if you have IRS tax debts, right? I mean, why is that not, more or less the same kind of thing? Look, you know, um, we're using taxation to punish people. You know, you want to avoid our citizenship tax rules, you want to live out, then just pay us an annual fee.
Mm.
Now obviously the people who pay high US tax would love that. The people who don't pay any US taxes would not. But the bottom line is this, Anthony, okay, that, you know, in the modern world, taxation has been completely weaponized. And there's no more vile expression of this than citizenship taxation, because citizenship taxation, first of all, practically means only that one country claims the right to tax the residents of another country. That's all it means.
Right.
But secondly, even if you could invent a justification for that, citizenship taxation is taxing people based on the circumstances of their birth. That's how most people get citizenship, and not on the circumstances of their life, resident and economic connection to a country. I mean, there's nothing more vile than this. I think, frankly, in the history of taxation.
John, thank you so much for today. I appreciate it. Now, if you are thinking, because many people believe that all roads lead to renunciation of your citizenship. If that's something you need help with, I'm going to recommend you reach out to my great good friend John. Here's his email: citizenshipsolutions@protonmail.com. And here's really my takeaway on today.
Treasury, if they want to talk about citizenship taxation. Anybody who wants advice on how it actually works, check that out as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Go check out his a ton of great.
To get the idea this might be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is just and I think this is one of the things that I've learned just so much over my past 20 years of being a tax attorney is just truly how much our governments hate us, but they insist on telling us we wanted this, and they insist on telling us that we voted for this. They insist on telling us this is all great. Yet it's the most vile and it's the most weaponized thing around. And it's so complicated. It's so hard to discuss. And that's really that's actually their secret weapon, is how complicated this is to actually discuss and for people to understand. And so it's intentionally vague. It's intentionally convoluted so that you lose the ball and just raise your hands and give up. And you know what? That's honestly why this channel exists, because we're trying to go through a lot of these complications. And if you're watching this, you're probably a pretty intelligent person. You're going to be very intelligent, because this is very difficult stuff to digest. Your role in all of this is to take what we're saying and share it with your friends who aren't so engaged in these various technicalities. It's your job to go out there and explain to them exactly how everything works, because we know we can't get it from the media. We know we can't get it from the media. What we get from the media is some superficial analysis that misses the boat. So it's really up to you to spread this word. So reach out to your friends and tell them this is what it is. Share snippets of this video. It's probably a little much for everybody, right? And really, just be sure you subscribe and tune in there and comment because, your questions are what the responses to are the questions your friends are going to be asking. And when you see a very simple thing, no, it's because of this, that's how we can spread the knowledge, that this unbearable technicalities overwhelms us. It's a sea of everything just to make us run and go away. That's all by design. So keep your eye on the ball, folks. Stay tuned and make sure you subscribe. Turn on those notifications.
One last thing. Okay, one last thing here. For listeners, this is so important. There's for years there's been discussion about, the U.S. how to get the United States to move to residency-based taxation, right? Which is, obviously the world standard, although there's disagreement on what residency means, okay? I want to make it very, very clear. While acknowledging that this is my opinion, I believe this is correct. Okay. The only way to solve this U.S. citizenship taxation problem is a complete, total, and absolute severance of citizenship from income taxation. It has to go completely. No workarounds, no carve outs, no
Yeah.
moving it around and just making it better. Okay. The only thing that solves this problem is a complete severance of citizenship from tax residency. And that's what Americans abroad need to get behind 100%.
100%, right? And they're still not. Yeah,
No,
you're
they're
absolutely right.
not.
And that's
Many
where
Americans abroad are proud of it because they figure, oh my God, my U.S. citizenship it's so valuable that I'm
oh,
able.
I know. And I talk to them every day. I know. I'm like, oh, what's it doing for you? Well, with that, thank you so much, John. Thank you everybody for joining us today. This is Anthony Parent, Virus Medic. Thanks for watching.